Hi, Megan. Can you hear me on there okay?
Hey, everyone. Yep, I can hear you fine.
Good. All right. It works. Yes. You never know. I will call this meeting to order, the TOP committee. Just a little housekeeping one. I want to do introductions. Jesse Brady is a new part-time remote person in my office. She'll be doing the minutes on this, and she doesn't. I don't believe she knows anybody. So let's go around the room and see if David's out so she can tell. You can start there.
Robert Boris, Chairman of the Economic Development Commission.
Larry Dunn, Chair of the Conservation Commission.
Dee Morrison, Director of Finance.
Paige Brock, Manager of Community and Economic Development.
John Reiner, Director of Planning and Development Services.
Deb Jones, Assistant Director, Planning and Development.
Mark Berry, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Greg Hanover, Director of Public Works.
John Burt, Town Manager, and Megan.
Megan Granado, Sustainability and Resilience Manager.
Thank you. First is, has everybody had a copy or read before the property reuse policy? Anybody need a copy of that?
Yeah,
I'm
another one.
gonna pass them around.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, I didn't bring it.
I'll give you one next that way. Now, if anybody watches this meeting later, this is available on the town website. If you go under policies, you will find the town-owned property reuse evaluation process policy. So that is under there. And just to go kind of briefly through the process. The initial stage is the town manager forms the TOP committee, the town-owned property evaluation committee, which is us. At which we there's a list of things we'll do. I'll go through that in a minute, as well as we have attorneys look at title constraints on properties, and then we ultimately make a recommendation to the council. Once it goes to the town council, there's a referral to the Planning and Zoning Commission to weigh in on the sale of it, or whatever other recommendation there is. CGS 824. The town council will hold a public hearing to gather citizen input. They will vote to determine disposition of the property. At that point, staff creates a request for proposals. That's shared with the Planning and Zoning Commission, RTM, and town council for input. And then at that stage, the mayor forms the property review committee. Which will have various staff on it, 2 council members, 2 RTM members, EDC rep. They send out, they do the sending of the RFP evaluations, RFP responses, and ultimately make a recommendation to the town council and preferred developer if that was the way we're heading. Town council will hold a second public hearing, the official state statute required public hearing. Make a decision on final disposition, refer to the RTM if they decide to sell. The RTM has to then approve a property sale or leases over 10,000. If we had some sliver, it wouldn't have to go to them, but most likely everything we would ever deal with would go to them. And then ultimately the goal is, if we were selling, to enter into a purchase agreement with the developer. In terms of what this committee, you'll see in that policy under the TOP, you can see there that the right after it says the decision on disposition of town-owned property process. First talks about evaluation, and then we talk about the questions there. Is the property currently used by a town department, etc. Consult with town attorney again on the title constraints and other possible legal reasons it cannot be sold. We have to have a appraisal as required by law, title search. And if it's felt necessary, a phase 1 environmental assessment. That's the gist of it. And we have 3 properties we're looking at today. Groton Heights. Well, first of all, I think we're doing the roll call. Does anybody have any? Anybody have any communications from our first meeting? I don't have anything. Okay, just double checking. There's no minutes yet, so that's not needed. We have 3 properties on the agenda: Groton Heights, Pleasant Valley, and SB Butler Schools. The first 2 of which we've gone through a process before. We'll update the history of that as I were to go from here on those 2. SB Butler is brand new to discussions. And we'll go ahead and move into former Groton Heights. And then terms of the history, John, do you want to take us or Paige or?
I certainly can. So John Reiner, just minutes. I had found an older referral from July 21 of 2021. Good date, John. And it kind of laid some of the background to the steps that we had gone through, because Connecticut general laws requires a public hearing anytime that we're looking to sell these properties. For Groton Heights, a public hearing was held before the town council on December 1st, 2020. As was mentioned in the policy, real estate appraisal is required, and it has to be posted on the town's webpage for 60 days prior to any sale. We did have appraisal of the property done by Flanagan and Associates back on June 5th, 2018. At that time, the appraised value was $367,000. Anytime we're looking to transfer or sell land, it has to be referred to the Planning and Zoning Commission for an 824 referral. That did happen with the former Groton Heights School back on February 25th of 2020. And the commission found that the sale of the property is consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development, our POCD. Section 9.6 of the town charter requires that the sale of all real property valued over $10,000 shall be recommended to the RTM and approved by a vote of the majority of those present. The town council recommended the sale of the property and referred the matter to the RTM at their meeting of April 6th, 2021. And the sale of the property was referred to the RTM for their May 12th, 2021 meeting, and it was approved by a majority of the RTM. So that's kind of the history of the town, I don't want to bureaucratic process of what we have to do from, appraisals, public hearings, 824 referrals, etc. We've also done phase 1 environmental surveys of the property, and that's kind of that piece of the process. I don't know do you want Paige to talk a little bit about what we've done previously, releasing an RFP?
Sure, and yeah, go ahead and tell us what got us to this point, back to this point.
Well, it was several years ago, we released the RFP and we had received several submittals, and I think most people are aware that we had ongoing communication with a company, Thayer Mahan. At one point in time, we had an executed letter of intent, and then COVID hit, and basically that changed a lot for a lot of people, companies, and also the business community. Their intent was to basically convert that building into their world headquarters. They also had a vision of building a second phase. There would be a building to the right of that existing building. Throughout that overall process, there was a discussion regarding a land swap between the adjacent Bill Memorial Library and a future development. There is an intent to basically 2 equal parcels of property, doing a swap so that the development at the campus for the school building would allow for a second phase or additional new development, and the library desired the grassy swath of land between them and the monument. They want that preserved. I think most people supported that. As time went on, coming out of COVID, Thayer Mahan continued to grow. I think they're up to about 150 employees now. Most of them work remote. Thayer Mahan decided they no longer were interested in pursuing the project. They did not want to own that real estate asset and take that on. That news was brought back to the town in the form of a letter sent to the town manager who related to the council. And since then, we were awaiting the finalization of the excess property process. We have been working on revising the draft RFP.
And just a little note on this property, there's a strong desire to save the core of the building. Not necessarily if it added on later gym, but the core, which is a really nice looking facility. It's our nicest looking school. And there is a title work and other things have been done, and there is a paper street that may have to be dealt with at some point, so. One little issue. I'd like to go ahead through those list of questions. I know we've done this in the past on this property, but to restart that and go through some of the things we're supposed to answer. And first is obviously, is the property currently owned by town department, or used by town department? No, it's not. Does the property support a municipal function? Not at this time. Is there a current or future foreseeable use by any town department? It'd take a lot of money for our use, and but unless somebody disagrees, I don't think so. So, is the property suitable for active recreation or open space purposes? It's not wooded, it's,
I do have a question. And we get to these properties that normally when a developer submits one is set aside for open space, the open space fund. Is that part of the RFP? Is that being?
that's for a subdivision, not for an individual property this way. Unless, of course, at some point the other
I was
committee
gonna say
decides to include it, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
one of the properties we'll talk to is big enough to be a subdivision. I guess I'll wait.
That'd be part of what depends on, we try to be open-minded as to what we're soliciting on as much as we can, because just like when this was done initially, I don't believe people really thought of their behind, and so something unusual can, so until you get to that stage. But if it was subdivision, it would have to, do something monetary or saving land.
If the city allows it, and I don't know whether their subdivision regulations
Oh, yeah,
allow the
think
fee
about
and
that,
above,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
regardless, that from an open space point of view, we're not, you're right, we've not much there or anything there.
Yeah.
John.
Mhm.
We try to maintain as much flexibility as possible dealing with these developers. Like, we would have never known Thayer Mahan was going to propose a undersea robotics headquarters in that location. We have a number of criteria in the RFP that we had previously used, and so it's more than just the financial benefit. One of them deals with what sort of community benefit are you going to provide? And that means different things to different people. I believe Thayer Mahan was interested in making part of that property open to the public. As we're dealing with various developers that are interested in our properties, some of them ask, they'll say, are we interested in a pocket park? Are we interested in this? Are we interested in that? Would you like it as an area where the public can come in and hold functions, voting, what have you? So we try to leave that open rather than telling them we want exactly this.
Okay, I think requirements versus suggestions, I guess.
now there's sometimes like we're gonna say, my intent in this, it's up to a later committee, is that you'll say, we want, if at all possible, we want that building safe. So, there may be things that get put in definitively later, but that's at that next stage. Not that we couldn't, relay that to them.
And John, one other quick thing, and in some of that, kind of two pieces, one for like open space, well, if somebody were to buy one of these pieces of property, whatever it is, in the town, they are then subject to the town zoning regulations, subdivision regulations, whatever they require, they'll have a fee in lieu of, if there was a subdivision or things like that, all that will apply. If there are other things that we want, specifically, we can put that in the RFP, but also, as Paige said, the more, we can talk about high aspirational goals, and then once we get the proposals in, that's where negotiation also happens.
Second step.
The second step
That's fair.
with, all right, what's the uniqueness that all of these people are proposing to us? Because it's a lot of these properties we've been talking about for years now. The development community wants them, so let them get creative. And, if we say, hey, we want this, well, they might have been willing to offer us twice that. So if we start limiting ourselves, saying, oh, we want this particular thing, or, oh, we want a development with affordable housing in Groton Heights, then Thayer Mahan wouldn't have submitted a proposal. So somebody might come in and say, hey, we'll do a housing development with this and that, but we want to keep it flexible. And then that review committee makes a recommendation to the council, and the council gets that ultimate authority on how they want to move it forward. Makes sense. Oh, yeah, all right, cool.
And just to mention on the potential swap of the library, they are still very interested. They reached out just a couple weeks ago again, so they continue to be interested in that. Okay, is the property, okay, it's a no on the open space recreational. Is the property suitable for road or drainage improvements? I don't know what we need. Is there any issues you can go in?
No.
Will significant economic development opportunities be generated by the sale of the property? Not that it always has to be, that's not necessarily, that's a goal, but not always a deciding factor. It could be, council could say we want affordable housing, and that's a different type of benefit. But there's a feeling that this could potentially be a good economic development opportunity.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yes, and even if it was housing or affordable housing, we have such a need for housing that,
All
you know,
levels.
Paige and I just earlier were talking about the town's economic development strategy, and the biggest goal in that economic development strategy was the creation of more housing, because in order to have the jobs that we're seeing grow and happen here, we need more housing. So even housing or affordable housing could be said.
And I don't believe we're full up at any level of housing, are we?
No.
Okay. Will the town be relieved of potential liabilities and or costs of maintaining the property? The utilities are off. Now, how long have we had ownership of their, control of this property? I arrived 6.5 years ago and it had already been here with us for a while.
I
So,
think it's been over a decade,
yeah,
well over a decade.
yeah, and the longer it goes, the worse the interior is getting, so,
I mean, we frequently get calls about some broken windows.
yeah, Public Works has done quite a bit of work over there.
We spend a lot of money, time over there.
It's worse than the broken window. We have youth that are accessing that building. Despite us trying to keep them out, it's.
Had to patch up a roof at one point, yeah. So yes, it would relieve the town of some liability and cost and. In terms of next steps, we recently talked with the attorney. I don't believe anything's changed on the title search. I don't know if that has to be rerunning it before the end. I don't believe anything's changed, but we just consulted with our attorney recently. In terms of the appraisal, if we could decide that way is sufficient for that agent to rerun.
I could, that was from 2018, that was 5 years ago.
Lots changed.
A lot has changed. I can reach out to Flanagan and I can see if I can get that updated.
Okay.
Yeah, let me do that.
And then we're pretty aware of any environmental issues out there. Is that right?
We did a phase 1 environmental. I don't know the date on that. I'll check it, but nothing should have changed because we haven't done anything. There hasn't been additional uses.
Is there a feel from the committee how we want to move forward with this form? Or any other information we desire to?
You want a motion? I'd make a motion that we make a recommendation to the town council that we sell the property out to our.
Second.
We have a motion to sell Groton Heights and to recommend to the town council to sell Groton Heights and to put it out for 2 RFP. Motion by Reiner, second by Boris. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. How much makes it? Opposed, say
Yelling.
which passes. Thank you. And then we'll move on to, is there any notes we want to give them? I think I'd like to still relay that there's still a strong interest in preserving the original. I know the council has that interest
Yes.
anyways.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll move on to Pleasant Valley.
and maybe just that we prefer that the exterior of the building be preserved, but we also need to see the state that it's in.
Hmm.
You can always preserve it. It's how much you want to spend to preserve it.
Right.
And that if,
So far, the brickwork and outer part looks pretty good at this point, doesn't it? But I know there was the old roof when I got here, so.
Public Works did some great job in contracting for the roof work. It's fairly dry in there now. Years back, that was not the case, but it's
far as I
pretty,
know, there's no leaks.
yeah, it's pretty sealed up.
Hopefully it'll last through the process.
Does town staff, someone from town staff just periodically inspect the building, or it's only when we get
Usually someone
calls?
calls.
Yeah. Have you taken any tours, developers out there in a while?
Today,
So anything new broken? Anything to worry about, concerned about?
no, it's, things are holding pretty steady. But yeah, it is definitely an attractive nuisance, no matter
Right.
how much plywood is put up. We have kids that try to get in and
Right.
get in.
And the windows, actually, the blight officer reached out to us on when the windows were broken out, and that's, you can't have plywood in the city like you can in the town, but you can do plexiglass and
So,
that kind
I
of
was just gonna
thing.
say, we don't put plywood up. Already knows.
Yeah. So, and so they do keep an eye, there's, the blight officer keeps an eye on the city and others do. So, okay, so recommended I would like to see at the time of the future committee, maybe give some bonus points or have, a section of points for if you do preserve it, to go into play. And if nobody says they can, work its way through. Pleasant Valley, John, do you want to give the background again?
yeah, sure. So, pretty similar process. So again, reading a referral that was sent to the council back from July 7th, 2021, outlining the process. And at that point in time, we had issued an RFP for the sale of the property. But again, let's see, Connecticut General Statutes 7-163E requires a public hearing. That public hearing was for Pleasant Valley was held on April 6th, 2021. Connecticut Journal Law Section 7-131W requires an appraisal and it be posted 60 days on the town's website prior to any sale. It was posted on, it's still posted on the town's webpage. And that appraisal was done by Flanagan and Associates on with an effective date of July 11th, 2019. The appraised property value at that point in time was $5,700,000. The proposal to sell or transfer the public land must be referred to the Planning and Zoning Commission for an 824 referral. It was referred to the commission and reviewed at their February 25, 2020 meeting. The commission found that the sale of the property is consistent with the plan of conservation development. Section 9.6 of the town of Groton Charter requires the sale of all real property valued over $10,000 to be recommended to the RTM and approved by a vote of the majority of those present at an RTM meeting. The town council authorized the sale of the Pleasant Valley School at their May 4th, 2021 meeting and referred and recommended the sale of the former Pleasant Valley School to the RTM for consideration. The RTM approved the sale of the former Pleasant Valley School property at their June 9, 2021 meeting.
Okay. And Paige, anything you wanted to add on this?
We had gone through that RFP round and there had been a presentation by one preferred developer. We had others as well. And then weeks afterwards, there was a decision by that developer that they were no longer interested in developing that property. They targeted properties they had in other states instead. And although there were other developers, the council had decided that at that point in time, they wanted to revisit their excess property, and that was kicked off was completed recently.
And just to mention, there's quite a bit of interest out there to keep creating it's been kind of used as an open space park for a neighborhood, and there's a lot of interest among different groups to keep some sort of playground park there, so definitely. And then, and I know, I believe you, at the time, you sent something in from the Conservation Commission about this property. You want to speak to anything the Conservation Commission might.
Well, a couple of things. I mean, looking at where it is, you're right, local park, but also you got about 4 acres of forest coverage. And part of the whole intent for sustainability, carbon sequestration is to maintain as much old growth as you can. 90 takes a long time to get to the equivalent. So the interest isn't that it shouldn't be developed, is looking, more whether it's a density or a smaller footprint for the development per se, and to maintain as much of that of those as forestry as possible. And I getting that from the community environment as well. We're trying to maintain, the canopy as much as we possibly can.
Right.
So it kind of gets back to the comment about when do you throw that in, or how do you kind of position that? Is certainly you get more points if they do that. I don't know if this is in a residential area, but it seems to me, maybe a high density development, conservation development would fit both of those issues very nicely.
And this is what you I feel like there's the proverbial head scratcher, because on the one hand, we want to, preserve our tree canopy, but we have very few limited sites that have access to water and sewer lines that are zoned for high density housing. So if we minimize development on this site, is that just then going to put pressure on other greenfield sites that are completely forested for other future development? And that's kind of the push pull on something like this. What we did see with some of the other potential developments or the preferred developer that ended up stepping away from this was there are some adjacent parcels that are for sale that are forested right now. And they were looking to purchase those, put them into part of the larger development picture and set those pieces aside for conservation. So maybe when we reissue the RFP, things we could talk about the availability of adjacent land, doing their best in their design to preserve existing tree cover, not be specific. I think something we should be talking about specifically is we've heard loud and clear from the community about the need for recreation space in this area, and say, we're looking for future or proposals to include a pocket park, recreation amenities, not only for the future occupants of the land, but also for the surrounding community and connections. I don't think we have to say we want a 10,000 square foot tot park, but I think if we say we need recreation amenities for the community here, and then, all right, we're going to get X number of proposals, weigh them out.
Back to the prior discussion, it's the desire versus a mandate.
Yes.
So I'm certainly fine with our desire is, I just want to make, at least on this property, a little more pushy to get a desire for that.
And I do think, at least for the current council, that they definitely would like to, see a reasonable, at least compromise in keeping trees, certainly. And I think that could be part of any motion we do, is we recommend it, but that's where we go, recommend sale, and additionally to try to, maintain, to have a pocket park, et cetera.
So this property is an RM zone, multifamily, but it's also in the Water Resource Protection District. There's a requirement to keep 20% of the land in its natural state. So that's a zoning regulation outside of whatever this commission decides.
That takes 16 acres here, you have 3, so it's actually almost all of 4 acres we're talking about.
So maybe,
So
we might not have to really state that we need to preserve 4 acres, because it's already, the regulations are gonna, in essence, almost do already that. How do we make that clear to the council and others that the zoning regulations are going to do?
Wouldn't that be in the RFP? I think.
And I think we've done that
Yeah.
before in other properties in
Yeah.
the Water Resource Protection District.
Right.
Strong stormwater management plan plus the other requirements of the zone.
It is a balance, and I understand the need to be strong on these positions, but it's always a balance in trying to provide flexibility as well, because we don't know, there might be someone who comes in and says, I'm gonna make 30% of the site open space, when we tell them it's gotta be 20.
Well, I think there's a minimum of,
Just the zoning regulations part. You know, that's
Yeah.
different than, like I said, I agree, it needs to be flexible. Because if I'm doing a conservation development itself, that typically is like 30% anyway, not 20.
Yeah.
So these
We-
things can coexist.
We do reference the zoning, which would be the minimum.
Right.
But we also will, I think actually, we have added some language. Our intent is to have some language that references some recreational space. Given that that neighborhood is deficient already, we're planning on adding some of that language.
Yeah, that's very clear in the recreation master plan that that northwest corner of the community has, the studies have been done and it's ideal to try to have a park within a 10-minute walking distance. And there are, most of that section of the community does not have a park anywhere close. And I'm not sure that a pocket park, dropping in a little tot lot.
Yeah.
Really addresses.
No, I
Yeah,
agree.
that'll be
Yeah.
something as we get
Yeah.
public comment later can be fleshed
I
out.
agree
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
that
yeah.
point. I think
Yeah.
little pocket parks aren't necessarily beneficial
Right.
from tax bases or other bases. So really
Well, yeah,
a little,
Yeah,
they serve a much smaller, a pocket park serves a much smaller group than, say, a neighborhood park. And if you look at the demographics in that area, there's a pretty high percentage of Hispanic. So that's an underserved group. So I think we need to, make sure that we're looking through a recreation lens pretty strongly before we, as we're deciding what to do with this particular parcel. And I understand the history before was, okay, let's, put in housing and I respect the fact that there's a need for housing, but there's also a strong need for parks or for a park in that area.
and I believe that's a strong desire with the current council and I
Yeah,
would anticipate that
Yeah.
continuing on.
We also add specific reference to that private land in the RFP and make it known that it's for sale.
I think it's important to just keep in mind that the minimum parking requirements are gonna drive a lot of what the decision maker of a developer getting involved here, because those constraints added with all your talking about kind of will shape what they're looking for. They're gonna, they're gonna put housing and they need a certain amount of parking per units and things like that. So you can sort of get an idea of conceptually what could possibly be there, with it, the scale of it, what it would look like. So I think a lot of it gets fleshed out once they're at the table and they're looking about what, what zoning will allow them to put in for the parking, and then we can iron out some of the issues with making sure there's enough open space set aside or other aspects of this, but
If I could just add as well, John mentioned it, that when a proposal is submitted, that's not the end all and be all. That's just the beginning. So let's say someone provided a proposal and it had an open space component and it was not satisfactory to the town. That would be brought up, that would be negotiated, and there would be a back and forth to get it to a point where we're comfortable.
At the same time, though, if council for sure knows we absolutely want something, then I think it's better be upfront so they don't waste their
right,
time.
that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
The intent should be
Yeah.
not mandated, but
yes, I agree, totally.
So does it make sense in whatever recommendation we make to reference that in the RFP, we want to make, we would do these things anyway, but I think we want to be very explicit. We want to reference the zoning regulations and the minimum open space because of the Water Resource Protection District. So that we don't send people having to dig through the recreation master plan. We can talk about how the town of Groton recreation master plan sees the need for a neighborhood sized park in this area.
right.
And we would be looking to have a developer, how can they address this need on or off site? We can give them some creativity, but I think if we did something along those lines. And then the open space is gonna help with the tree canopy. I think those kind of the two big issues.
And then Megan, I don't want to overlook you. Did you have anything you wanted to add to this topic?
No, been enjoying listening along. Definitely see the need for the open space, reflecting what Mark was talking about. and the conservation concern with the intact forest as well. But it sounds like putting some of that information up front, so folks know when they develop their approach that those are priorities for the town. That makes sense.
And of course, there'll be a public hearing too, to hear from people prior to drafting the RFP, so there'll be a lot of time too to, to get that input. But I'm very much in favor of your approach, so myself. Okay, let's go through the questions then. The property currently used by a town department. I should mention that the Board of Ed is using this for one of their clubs at this point, the robotics club. We're very successful. However, they've been given quite a bit of notice that this will eventually sell, and they've been looking for alternative locations. So, but just to mention that it's not a town proper use, but it is being used for something. But not by a town department. I believe that there's nothing else going on out there.
Board of Ed has storage in that wood frame building.
They still have storage and stuff. Still.
Yeah, but Sam said, Susie, tell them to get a dumpster out.
Okay.
Can't be valuable.
What? Do we think it's likely that they'll remove that material? That whole building, it's almost like a barn, is loaded with materials, so.
You're talking about the main building with the robotics, you're talking about the storage and
The storage at the corner.
Yeah, and I think the stuff's mostly outdated. And was
There's
that part of any of our earlier auctions at all? I know they've scavenged anything they could find that were useful in the new schools, and none of that was found useful, so.
I think it's where they put stuff that's, they never want to see again.
Yeah.
I really, my question has to do with cost. Are we as a town going to dispose of the materials in there, which are basically worthless, or are we going to pass that on?
Well, it sounds like Sam said he'll take care of Sam Kilpatrick, basically Greg's counterpart with Board of Ed, so until said otherwise, I think we'll plan on that.
Yeah, so the developer will just be responsible for demo the building.
Now, if any of you want to take like 20 desks home, old textbooks from 30 years ago. Does the property, well, this is for the second question, does the property support a municipal function? If you want to consider Board of Ed robotics, sort of. But not ongoing in, they've known for several years that it won't continue, and that property is under our control. It's not under the Board of Ed's control. Is there a current or future foreseeable use by any town department? I don't believe so. That's pretty spread out from where other things are. Is the property suitable for active trade? Hey,
I'm sorry, John. Just to back up on that, so Mark, just back to your point, that there's a community need for recreation.
Yeah.
Is it your anticipation that the developer would own and control this recreational space that you need?
Control how?
They'd
Be responsible for
versus us maintaining it.
maintenance?
Yeah.
That would be ideal, but
unlikely.
unlikely.
Yeah, something to keep in mind though as we get into those next.
Well, I think it's
Yeah.
important because the developer might say, so you want me to develop this property, but you want me to carve out land for a neighborhood park. How about this? I'll just buy a fraction of the site and you
Yeah.
just keep the rest. That might be the case.
So they might want to continue holding this as part of their requirements, but.
Yeah, they might hold on to it for density and then once they're done, say, well, here, we're only taking this or sell this back to you for $1 with all the improvements done.
Yeah.
And those are all things that we could negotiate.
Right.
And we'll flesh out how the actual RFP language will say, preferences are.
I guess we'll just figure it out later, but you don't, in an ideal world, you're not looking at part of that site saying, I want to keep it.
Only if we had to.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's pretty
but I mean,
far away from where you're
well, it
making all
is,
those things,
yeah, but there's a clear shortage of park open space in that area, so that's it should be addressed.
Mhm.
And,
If we need to do it, we'll do it.
and if we need to do it, right, I mean, we can't just say, no,
Right.
we're not gonna deal with it because it's not convenient.
Right.
Yeah.
We've already talked about the recreational open space purposes. Is the property suitable for road or drainage improvements? Any issues?
No,
there?
we rebuilt that road like 15 or 20 years ago. Put a 10-foot wide multi-use path along the whole length of it, so it's got all the drainage and improvements it's ever gonna need in
Okay.
the next 100 years.
Will significant economic development opportunities be generated by the sale of the property? I think that's sort of in line with what we said before. That's certainly a goal, and I think there's the opportunity, but it's not the only driving force. Will the town be relieved of potential liabilities and or costs to maintain the property? I believe we're paying for, Greg, are we paying for all the utilities there?
Board of Ed is paying for some of them because they're using it.
Do we have some expenses there?
Yeah, I think we're paying maybe for the electricity. I would have to double check.
And a lot of these schools, of course, the longer we have it, the more they break down, the more liability we end up having. So a lot of it's leaving future, into the future liability. Is there any wish to now? Same thing. What was the year again, John, on when that was the appraisal was done on that?
2019.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
so
one, we probably should update that appraisal as well.
And I don't believe there's any title constraints there, was there?
No, I believe we did a title search and a phase one environmental assessment on both of those. I don't have the dates of those in front of me. And, again, as we think about what the appraisal comes out, and I say this, more say for, I guess, some discussion, but for general knowledge of the committee, and as this moves forward, if someone is going to set aside a portion of the land and build us a state-of-the-art neighborhood park on a portion of the land or off-site, one of the things they might say is, yes, the land was appraised at X, but I need to invest $3 million off-site buying this other piece of property, building a state-of-the-art neighborhood park here and a pocket park there, all in this region. So we don't have to necessarily limit it. As we think about this, we don't have to limit it to one thing. Somebody could say, well, what if I supply 4 pocket parks in this area of the town meeting this need? I don't know exactly what the neighborhood the recreation master plan speaks to for the number and types of parks, but those are the things that if we're not too prescriptive, but reference the plan and talk about the drastic need. Okay, well, show us how much you want this property and proposed developer. And the ones that get the most creative are going to be that offer that town need. It might then reflect in, oh, well, we're going to pay less, but look at everything we'll offer you. And here's the keys to all those. Sorry, Mark, you got to maintain them, but you got them.
Yeah.
Sure, anybody that would like to make a motion on to recommend to the council? Now, I assume in terms of how the trying to think about this, in terms of getting the appraisal updated, that doesn't really affect, I think, our recommendation to move forward. However, the council may want that information before, too long on it. So I'll tell you, I'll have to see what the council wants to do for when to entertain it.
I'll call, is it Flanagan on both of these? Flanagan did both of these appraisals. The updates, they're generally pretty quick on. I don't want to throw a date out, but it might be 4 weeks, it might be less, it might be a little bit more.
Right.
I think we'll get a turnaround on those because they've already done so much of the research. Now, it was 4 years and 5 years ago.
And I'm not sure whether it makes sense. We're only about, until the first when the new council's in, we're about 2 months away. And it takes a while just to schedule a public hearing, so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're in that much of a rush right now.
Okay. Yeah, but I'll get those moving along.
Okay.
I'll make a motion again that we recommend to the town council that we dispose of the property, that we note in any RFP for the sale of the property, the fact that this land is in the Water Resource Protection District and our zoning regulations require a set aside of land. In addition, we want to reference the Town of Groton Recreation Master Plan and the drastic need for recreation in this section of the town, and that be incorporated into the RFP. Is that too verbose of a motion?
No, I was gonna suggest we needed to add that language anyway.
Okay,
We have a second, is that a second?
Yes.
all right.
Okay, we have a motion by Reiner, second by Dunn. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to SB Butler. And as mentioned, we do not have a history on this. And that was only recently given to town control. All utilities are still on there, correct? Right? Yeah.
Our heating bill, so.
Right. And I don't want to, being a brand new property, I don't want to rush too fast on this. Do we want to start getting getting the title? Have we done title work on this in the past? For some reason, I almost felt like we did, but maybe.
I feel like we did. Let me check to see if we did title work, and I don't recall if we done an appraisal. I feel like Greg might have had a survey of this at one, maybe just on file.
Maybe, it's.
Or it
an
might have been-
old subdivision.
Yeah. It might have been the
So
subdivision.
maybe for the next meeting, collect
Yep.
what we have and, we can go
Yep.
from there. And this is another one, I know there's some council interest currently on having some sort of. Is there kind of two playgrounds there, like on each side? I don't know,
Yes,
it's-
right.
there's an
Yeah.
abundance of
Yeah.
broken down
Mm,
playgrounds.
Right, so we definitely want something
And
new,
ball fields, yeah.
but I think there's some interest in having a park there from the council's perspective.
Yeah.
Park, do you continue to, do you agree with the need there?
Well, I mean, within that property, there's 4 other properties that provide open space, More Woodlands, Ramblebrook, Mystic Meadows, and Stanton Farm. But, the Parks Department is currently maintaining that property to some degree, mowing, and there is a ball field on there that we maintain, so.
And we have
Uh,
utility costs.
Right. And.
We are getting some interest. on that.
Yeah, and Little League, I think, is using that field, so I think if that field went away, we'd have to figure out. How to address that
Right.
shortage.
And rather than run into, I'm sort of tempted to, just to not run into any issues, to allow public comment at the next meeting, just if any neighbors want to say anything up front, just so we have that, some of that information before you might have any objection to that.
I receive some emails, maybe every couple of months from 1 or 2
Mhm.
neighbors asking about what's the status. I got one last week from someone. I told them,
One
keep
person
reaching out to me.
desperately wants to buy it.
Yeah, we've had people that want to buy it. We've had some local developers that are consistently reaching out to us that want to buy the property, turn it into small housing cottage type developments here. So there's been, and they understand that there's some recreation and the need to keep a neighborhood scale. So we've had interest from developers and neighbors.
Right. Okay, so for the next meeting, we'll see what we have for survey, any environmental work, anything else has been done, appraisal, and go from there. And then I'll put public comment for this on the agenda. And shortly before the meeting, I'll put the word out that we're going to be accepting comments here.
Any comments? This
Yes.
session? Okay. But I think what I've heard though, is the intent is that if you want to market, there may be some constraints that we haven't yet
Sure.
don't
Yeah,
understand,
yeah.
but we're not looking for this to be kept by the town.
No, yeah, I don't believe we have any interest in being kept by the town.
I don't know if it would be for our next meeting or let me talk to the folks in OPDS and see if there's any way we could utilize the Greater Groton platform to maybe put a little bit of information out there, see if we can get some feedback. Because, generally, it's always great to hear from the neighbors to just kind of throw the predictor out there. Often what we hear from neighbors is we want limited development, if any development, we want to keep it as open space ball fields. But, what's the
Better
larger?
situated, the more public comment opportunities, I think, the better you're situated.
Agreed.
So,
Yeah. I think that the broader net we can cast for getting public
Right.
feedback is the better.
okay, so that's where we'll leave that at this point. Do we want, in terms of the next meeting? Did this work well for people? What would be the next one? I'm saying the 15th. Would we want to meet next on a month from now, on Wednesday, November 15th? That work? I'm wondering, if we're gonna do public comment, could people meet a little bit later so people could?
Yeah, I was gonna say 3 o'clock.
Yeah,
Not good for public comment.
yeah, I don't anticipate. Yeah, we'll see how long it lasts, but could people do a 5 o'clock meeting instead that one time, just so we can get public comment? Because we'll definitely be some unhappy people at 3 o'clock. Okay, sounds good. So the 15th at 5 PM, I'll make sure this room's open. Is there anything else for? Or to discuss anything else, we'd have to amend the agenda, but.
It's a special meeting, so you can't.
Oh, yeah, you can't special meetings, you can't add anything else.
I guess the process question, some of these things have been dragging out for years. And I know you listed the process, and my thought was.
No.
Get it quicker? or-
Well, that, the next stage will be up to the council. They've had, public hearings in the past, et cetera. They could always choose to.
Never have enough public hearings, right?
Right. So that'll be up to the council.
Just for information, I think a lot of people know this, but we need time to market. We've actually been doing that. For Pleasant Valley and also Groton Heights, and it allows the development community to know that something's coming.
Right.
Whereas before, they're not interested when there's no relative time frame. It's like if you're gonna buy a house from a seller and the seller's like, I haven't figured it out yet, you're not too interested. But now that we're moving things along, we're having more communications with the development community. They're coming out to the properties, taking a look, trying to get their ideas, and then anticipating the future release of RFPs.
You just said that we could get the word out that this is now it's in the process. Therefore, you're open for review surveys.
Yeah, I'm saying now we've increased our marketing to the development community so that they know that there's something coming,
Right.
so they can put it on their radar.
In the that's why I said in the process, so it's not. That's what I would say, that's why it's asked the other question, says that we're not gonna retain it, we are on a process to sell the property. Yeah, it might be a little bit, but to your point, we can get out there and start some early market.
Yeah, we've been doing that.
All right.
Yep, we never stopped marketing Pleasant Valley. Groton Heights was on hold.
Passive.
We were just very passive about it because we didn't have an end direction. We were waiting on this property before we said, hey, now we know a date. We knew at some point in time the town was gonna do something, but we weren't sure what that something was gonna be. Because it could have very well been that the town council could have said, nope, we're gonna keep it and knock down the building and build ball field. So we didn't want to push it too far, but we kept showing the property to people, not giving any one group any particular type of advantage, but here it is, here are some options, here's the zoning. And now I think that we've made a recommendation. We can start letting people know, all right, it's happening. We still don't have a date of an RFP release, but if, developers start getting the teams together, if you want to submit a proposal, it could be, 3-5 months from now.
Yeah, typically we'll have usually a 60-day window for a developer to respond once an RFP is on the street. That's really not enough time for them to prepare the best project. So that's why we do the marketing ahead of time. They can start getting a sense for these properties, what might they want to do. So by the time the RFP comes out, they're ready to respond.
Now, I know you have pages on your, Explore More Groton on these, is that right? But have they been updated at all recently? Like, what I want to make sure is that not just ones that have to be on our database list, you know, gets information that if they go to our website, they'll know something's, you know, kind of coming along.
Yeah, we can take a look at it to see if there's something we can update or maybe put some language there that, you know, the town council has updated this process, the town-owned property evaluation committee, it's, you know, made recommendations to the council on these two to move forward, and RFPs may, you know, are expected in the winter of 2024. I mean, something like that, we could probably put some language out there. Versus when people ask me about SB Butler, what are you doing? When are you gonna sell it? I want to buy it. It's like, we have zero direction right now on SB Butler. That's kind of the message I've been putting out to people. We don't know what the future use is because we haven't even made a recommendation yet.
So just to be clear, so until this process was in place, there was no consummation procedure with any developer. So now we have that, then you can be more active in engaging with them. Right?
Well, we used to have a process
Right.
that was a much more minimal process than this. And that's what we used to do and how we released the previous RFPs. Since back in 2021, when the council said, oh, let's hold off and
Right.
we want to revisit this, we haven't had a process, so we haven't, you know, pushed any of these. Now we have a process again.
Right.
Is there anything else? No, we'll plan our meeting on November 15th at 5 p.m. I'll double check the room is available. Motion there. Oh, motion to adjourn. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Are there any word property that you put on the agenda or?
Next month we'll touch, the next month will be basically focused on SB Butler. I don't think at this point we have anything else to look at, do we? I don't know.
There's a couple other properties that we can look at and maybe move forward. There's one piece that we consistently get requests on.
One on Laurelwood, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's that?
there's one on Laurelwood that the town has owned for a very, very long time.
Yeah, let us check on some of the inquiries that we get, but yeah, there's not a whole lot of
Right.
properties of significance beyond what we're talking about right now.
Where at the mall? What is it?
It's behind the old post office, Gabriel's Karate.
There, it's basically a rock ledge.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Property.
Yeah. We've got a camper there right now. Okay, so if you want to put some, you know, just give me the information.
Okay.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, yeah.
Second. For a second, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We are adjourned unanimously. We are adjourned at 4 o'clock even.
Very good.
Yeah, thanks, Megan.
Thanks, everybody.